Welcome to Gate City Insider. I'm Rosemary Plyben. 54 adventures in 6 years. It kind of sounds like the premise of a book, right? Well, it is, but it's also a whole lot more than just printed pages. Laura Carney is a journalist and author, and she's finishing up a 2-week stay in Greensboro as part of One City, One Book community read. Hello and welcome.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Good to have you with us. Okay, let's start by just talking a little bit about you. What were you like as a little girl?
Oh gosh, I was very shy, very pensive. I was in accelerated classes from a young age and very academic, and I just loved to draw all day long, basically. And I played a lot of sports. I was a tomboy too.
A reader and writer as a child?
Yes, oh, big time. I started reading, my mom claims I was 3, but I don't remember.
Okay, wow, that's impressive. I'm guessing that your parents read to you as a child a lot.
Yes, a lot. Yeah, my grandmother too.
Oh, that's great. All right, so tell us about your dad, because this is leading somewhere. Tell us about your dad.
My dad was a writer himself, and he was a salesman by day, and he actually he sung and he was a comedian in nightclubs.
That's a lot. Yeah, what was that like, growing up with him, like doing all those things?
He just was one of those people who sang more than he spoke and was always on, always entertaining everybody, always making jokes all the time. Yeah, very charismatic.
I'm picturing him making up songs about you guys when, just the getting ready song or the breakfast song or something like that.
There actually wasn't a lot of that because my parents divorced when I was 6.
Okay.
So I would see him twice a week. But it was always very undivided attention from him when we did see him.
I love that. And you lost him when you were young, 25 years old.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What was that like?
It's interesting you say that because since doing this project of finishing his bucket list for him and writing this book, I don't even think of it as having lost him anymore. But he did die when I was 25 in a car crash with a teenager who was using her phone and went through the next intersection where he was, which was it was devastating.
It was, yeah. And you found, though, a little bit later, a few years later, a list that he had left, a bucket list. Tell us about how did you find it? What was that like?
Sure. Well, it was actually 13 years later. I had just gotten married 6 months before, and my brother was moving into his first house. And when they were moving in, as he was unpacking, he discovered that they had this bucket list that my dad wrote, which we later found out he wrote it when he was 29. So he wrote it the year I was born. And I just knew immediately I needed to finish it for him. I had actually become a safe driving activist at that point. I'd been doing that for a couple of years. But even that happened very much by happenstance because I was a copier at Good Housekeeping. I managed to accomplish my dream of working at a magazine in New York, what I had moved there for the year that he died. Oh, wow. And I had sort of become blocked as a writer because there was one really important story I needed to tell, but I was too afraid to tell the story of the year that he died. So I became an activist, and as soon as we saw the list, I really think that part of the reason I knew immediately I needed to finish this list for him, to honor him, was because of the activism. Because I thought, well, maybe people will understand this was a full human being who had dreams just like anyone else does, and that's what happens when someone dies in one of these car crashes.
Instead of just a line in the newspaper.
Yeah, just a statistic, because I think we can start to look at people that way sometimes.
Let's dive into the list a little bit. So the list, it was in a box? Was it in an envelope? Was there any fanfare around it? Was it scribbled type?
It was folded up, 3 folded up pieces of notebook paper, front and back. Yeah, a little, and I actually have since learned that my dad kept that list in his wallet all the time. That's why it was folded, and it had survived the car crash. I was in the car with him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So what struck you first about the list?
Just how funny it was. Like my dad didn't have very easily decipherable handwriting, so my brother and I really got a chuckle out of reading that. But it was, some of the items were so dramatic, like swim the width of a river, the way he would say it. I mean, he was a writer and he was very dramatic, but I actually ended up doing that out in Asheville. I swam across the French Broad. But as I went through the list, one thing that really struck me was how many of the items my brother and I had already done. I would say by coincidence, but I don't think anything is really by coincidence.
Right,
and
yeah.
I mean, we are our father's children. So, I had been to Paris, I had become a marathon runner. So I run 10 miles straight seemed like an easy one for me to start with. So yeah, it was more, I couldn't believe it. Like, wow, we really have been kind of accidentally following in our father's footsteps all along. And then of course there were very sweet items.
Right.
Or it was give my children the best education, the best example, and the most love I can give. And what really struck me about that one was it looked like he had added most love later, like at the top, as though he was afraid perhaps he had not given us the best example.
Had he checked off some things on the list? I know he had.
Yeah, well, there are 60 items, and my mom's not sure, did he finish writing the whole thing in 1978? We don't know. Maybe he added it a little bit later in life, but there were 60 items. The ones that he did 5 of them. So help my parents enjoy their retirement, have an impressive record collection, see a World Series game live, do a stand-up monologue a comedy monologue in a nightclub, which I'm so relieved he did because I didn't want to do that one. And then it was, what was the 5th one? What was it? I'm stuck right now. I'm stuck. But I do remember that there was one that he had marked. This is why he had marked one as having failed, which was pay my dad back $1,000 plus interest. Yeah.
And so how did you go about finishing this? Did you check off things that you and your brother had already done?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of did, but then as I was going through it, I began realizing like some of them were worth doing again. It just made sense to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like visit Paris, for example, I had already done that, so I wasn't gonna pay for another trip back to Paris.
I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
So things like, because I realized in the outline of telling the story as I wrote the book about my father's list, I could include a flashback to having gone to Paris before.
So, okay, we're going to dive some more into, the book is My Father's List, in case you didn't get that already. It's this year's community read for One City, One Book in Greensboro. You can find out more about it and all the events surrounding it, make your own bucket list, all kinds of things like that. Start at greensborolibrary.com. Now, we're going to dive more into My Father's List. We're going to find out exactly how Laura completed it and how it changed her. That's coming up right after this break. Welcome back to Gate City Insider. Our guest today is Laura Carney. She's author of My Father's List, selection for this year's One City, One Book. And when you first decided to finish this list, you made a plan, you're going to do it. I'm wondering, were there things that you thought would be easy, things that you thought would be hard, and did those shift once you kind of really got started on it?
Yes. Well, one of the things I discovered early on was anytime I thought something was too easy, like I thought beat a #1 seed at tennis would be easy because
Wait, you thought that would be easy?
Well, I played on my high school tennis team.
Okay.
So when it was something like that, like, I have some experience with this, and I've been having a stroke of luck with these first 14 items, so I'll just do this one in one day. Just check it off, move to the next, like we do with to-do lists sometimes. Yeah. When I started developing that attitude, that's when it would become disastrous. I actually ended up injuring my foot on the tennis court. I had a foot surgery later that year and, gradually became afraid I might not be able to run ever again.
Oh, no.
But the lesson in that ended up being letting my husband take care of me, which was something that was difficult for me in general. I was so self-sufficient, But that I gradually began to learn that I needed to approach each list item with this attitude of humility and kindness. So it also could never be a thing where I was being arrogant. You would think that type 40 words a minute correctly would be easy, but that actually ended up having its own difficulties with it. My brother did that one with me, and he actually, he did it, I think he did 63 words a minute correctly. Of course, he did it right before me. Harder ones, I would say number 3 on the list, write and have a few novels published. That was probably one of the most difficult. But have 5 songs recorded. That was the most emotionally difficult for me because my dad was a singer, and I ended up choosing the songs he sang to us when we were kids. So I actually did that one very at the end. But they were always surprising. Some would take a day, some could take 3 years. Correspond with the Pope. That only took me 6 weeks, and I got a letter back.
And you would have thought that would have been really hard.
Yeah, that's why I put it off until year 6. But it actually happened right away. So.
That's really cool. Okay, so 6 years living out your father's list, his dreams. How did it change how you thought about him, and how did it change how you thought about you?
Leading up to finding that bucket list, part of why I became a copy editor in magazines was because I needed to be adjacent to creative people, but I was often too timid to actually take creative risks myself as a writer. So it was like, at least I'm sort of here. And I always sort of misunderstood my dad's creativity growing up. And I would feel like, oh, I wish he could just stick to one job. I wish he could stick to one idea. And as I began doing this bucket list, obviously with 54 items in 6 years, I'm switching from idea to idea quite a lot. And I actually became a freelancer then, and now I have like 11 different freelance copy editing jobs. That is not something I ever would have chosen.
Right.
I would have said, that's too crazy, that's too risk-taking. But now that's the kind of person I've become, and I've actually begun to understand that I thrive in situations where I'm doing lots of different things because I'm my father's daughter, and it was a thing I had resisted, but it actually makes me more creative.
And you'd said you'd really resisted writing about and thinking about when your father died, and this changed that too.
Well, yeah, it is. That's one of the things we talked about at our kickoff on Tuesday, because my friend Melanie Brooks was here, and she wrote this wonderful book I'd recommend for everybody to go read called Writing Hard Stories. I actually bought that book for myself when I started. So, and now we're friends. Isn't that crazy?
That's pretty cool.
But it was about how to go about writing about something traumatic, and it was just very difficult for me to revisit that. But you know what? The list would help take care of that too sometimes, because when I was stuck on that couch after my foot surgery and I couldn't go anywhere, that was when I wrote the chapter about my dad's funeral, because I could no longer run away from myself. But I also want to add, though, one thing that was very healing about this project is when I was able to go back and write about the more difficult moments, and also, my parents divorced when I was 6, that was difficult to write about too. I was able to now integrate the sadder moments in my life into the longer timeline. And there was something about doing that really healed the trauma that was still left over inside of me.
Yeah. You started writing about the list as you started working on it. So what made you want to do that? And then, and writing about it is one thing, sharing it is another thing too. So what was kind of the thought behind both of those, and what led you to actually share it and make it into a book?
I always thought this was activism from the beginning. I always thought this is something where all of my friends I've met who've lost children this way, who've had other family members die this way, I'm going to get to be their voice and do this for them. So on the days, even the days where I was like, I don't feel like jumping out of an airplane today, like I would make myself do it. I would say, well, my fear doesn't matter as much as it does to get their message out there into the world. So that was what it was in the beginning. But then I gradually began to realize that I was feeling better doing this, and I was becoming more confident doing this. And I think what it gradually became was this expression of a person who heals from grief, from traumatic grief, and also an expression of a woman who learns how to be who she really is. So I think it started to gradually become a story about authenticity. And that, I think, has actually touched more people, and is the reason that the book has caught on the way that it has.
Yeah. All right, we're going to talk more about My Father's List, the community read for One City, One Book. Again, GreensboroLibrary.com is where you can find out more about it, and a little bit more with Laura right after this quick break. We're back on Gate City Insider with author Laura Carney. She wrote My Father's List, How Living My Dad's Dream Set Me Free. We were talking in our last segment, and you talked about your activism. And you talked about it really around grief and trying to give people voices and to name their grief and to live through it. But you also were active before this book, before the list, you were active talking about distracted driving. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it has kind of become the new drunk driving in a way, except for the fact that we all have iPhones now, or some version of an iPhone, and it's. I think at some point it dawned on me that it wasn't that people didn't know; it was rather it had become convenient for people to just use their phones at all times. So you get into the car and it's just another place that you're sitting in, and I had learned so much about what it actually does to your brain. I mean, even if you make a hands-free phone call, it affects your field of vision through the windshield. And I started doing very much straight activism with that, but at some point I started learning about the power of positivity and how if you actually give people positive reinforcement, that makes a difference too. And that started to feel more aligned with who my dad was as a person. He wasn't someone who ever shook his finger at anyone or shamed anybody. So I thought at one point, well, what if I become someone who just really values my life by doing this intentional living? And I started writing my own bucket list. And now I actually teach bucket listing at Modern Prairie, which is the actress Melissa Gilbert's brand. And I just think if you're a person who is intentional about your life and you're mindful about what you're doing, you're not going to be the type of person who drives distracted anyway.
I love that. I love that connection. And that was my next question about your list. We share some of the things on your list.
Sure. Well, one of them was hike the Lenape Trail, which my husband and I just did, but that was one of the ones that took longer than I thought because it took us a whole year because we did it over on the weekends.
It's how long?
36 miles, but I believe we did 72 because we'd have to park and then go and then come back.
Right.
But I became an avid hiker doing that, and it became just a fun, free activity for my husband and I to do on weekends. A lot of mine are actually hiking related. I really would love to hike the Camino in Spain, and I'm sort of working my way up to it. Pikes Peak, I went to go try to climb Pikes Peak. It didn't go as well as I hoped, so I'm going to have to go back. But that's the thing with list items I'm learning is it's not about the outcome as much as it is the journey. So if you choose something that your heart is yearning to do, it's because you're supposed to get something from that.
Yeah. So does your list grow? Does it? Do you
Yes,
keep adding
I need to
to
stop.
it?
I have like 290 items at this point, and it's probably because it's on my laptop, so it's so easy to just open it and type a new thing.
But does it feel pretty good to check one off? It has
Yes,
to, right?
yeah,
Like that's part of it.
I think I've checked 80 off now of the
Wow.
290, so I'm doing okay.
Yeah. And the idea is to keep making your list. So speaking of, do you have recommendations? So how do you start a list, and what do you encourage people to think of when they're making their list?
Well, what we teach in our Modern Prairie class, I teach it with a woman named Stacy Lauren, who founded the Do the Thing challenge.
Yeah.
And we're actually doing it right now. If you want to join us, Greensboro, I shouldn't have looked over there, but if you want to join us, we're doing it on a private Facebook group. So all you have to do is go to the Greensboro Library page and you can find it. So what I recommend, take 15 minutes and write down a list of values. Do that first, because there's something about writing that values list that gets you centered. And you stop becoming someone who's living for what other people expect of you. And then write down just 5. Just start with 5 and take a month and try to do at least one of the 5.
Okay, that can be hard, especially if you have these big adventures. But they don't always have to be so big. I mean, I think, they don't have to be go to Paris. They don't have to be skydive.
No, my dad had grow a watermelon on there. plant an apple tree.
Yeah. Did you grow a watermelon?
I did, but it was only about this big.
It counts, right? It was green
counts.
and pink on the inside, or at least
Yeah,
a little bit
it
pink
was
on the
more
inside?
about turning me into a gardener, which I never thought I could be living just outside of New York City.
And to make something with your own hands, right?
Yeah.
What do you hear from readers who have started to make their list, to live their list, to be more authentic?
Oh gosh, so many things. I think there's something about how honest the book is, and I'm not Superwoman doing these list items. There's when I ran the 10 mile straight, it was in the LA Marathon, and I started peeing my pants while running down Rodeo Drive. When I jumped out of an airplane, I'd had an apple for breakfast that day, and I threw up midair. I made sure I included these ridiculous things that happened because I wanted to be clear, I'm just a regular person trying to do something extraordinary. And I think there's something about the energy of that when people read this book, it helps them to recognize, oh, if she can do this, I can do this too. And that doesn't just apply to bucket lists. It also applies to people who have an important story to tell, but they're too afraid to tell it. So I have a lot of people now who have asked me to help them publish a memoir or even self-publish. And my husband and I, he's a book designer, I'm a copy editor, so hey, if you have a story, we're happy to help you do it.
You love to tell a story, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a journalist at heart, and that's telling other people's stories.
Yeah, I know, yes. So what would your dad think of this? What would he think of the book, about you, first about you finishing the list, then writing a book, and then passing it on like you have?
Oh gosh, you're going to make me cry. I think it's the thing that we just said. I think it's that it's not only that I had faith in him, that he was leading me every step of the way doing this because he was, but I've now become a person who emboldens other people. And I teach them that they can accomplish anything they set their mind to, because if you have a dream, the universe wants to see you get it done.
I love it. I love it. Well, you can check out Laura's book from the library, of course, or buy it at one of our many wonderful locally owned bookstores. Find out more about My Father's List and the One City, One Book program by going to GreensboroLibrary.com. From all of us here at Greensboro Television Network, thank you for spending some time with us. Hope a great day.